1430 KASI. And you know, when the president says it, it must be true. It is your turn on News Talk, 1430 KASI. Brent Rice here until 2 o'clock. Still with us on the Newsmaker line, Iowa State University political science professor Stephen Schmidt. And as we mentioned, Professor, who's in town?
What?
First base.
First base, right. All right, whatever. Who's on first?
Exactly
What's
right.
on second?
China's president, Hu Jintao, is in town.
Yeah.
We've said all the appropriate things, and we've played nice, and we're going to sit down and give him a big, lavish state dinner, and then I don't know if we're going to ask for an extension on our loans, if we're going to ask for more lead-based children's toys, lead-based painted children's toys. There is some, this is not being ignored politically with China's history of human rights abuses that we are welcoming in with all of the ruffles and flourishes of a visiting dignitary. That is not being lost on critics of U.S. foreign policy.
No, but you ask this. In what country of the world are more people randomly killed by firearms, China or the U.S.? The Chinese president could talk to Obama and say, well, the world is also very concerned about the fact that a lot of innocent people, are getting killed in your country because you have such lax gun laws. And my friend, the president of Mexico, is tearing his hair out because the Mexican drug cartels can cross the border and go to gun shows in Arizona and New Mexico and buy, heavy armament and take it back to Mexico and destroy his country. And we think the United States should be taking more steps to take care of that. Yes, we can smack China on things like human rights, which the president is obliged to do and everybody's pushing. But, if other countries came back and smacked us on some of the things that happen in the United States that are not perfect, we would be really mighty mad. And so I have very, very mixed feelings personally about the extent to which the United States should in fact be, reading other countries, the book, the rules on how people should be treated and political freedom and so on, because we certainly have room for improvement and we wouldn't like the reciprocal. We have, China is a big trading partner of the U.S. There isn't any reason why China and the U.S. shouldn't be friends. The Chinese, didn't ask for this. American companies decided that they didn't want to, manufacture stuff in the U.S. because it was too expensive. The unions were too strong, taxes were too high, environmental laws were too stringent, and you can, the list is huge. I don't want to read it because our listeners will fall asleep or get stuck in their cars on the interstate. But, we went there, the stuff that's manufactured in China, if I recall correctly, Walmart has set the standard in the world for manufacturing and pricing things, and that is not a Chinese company, the last that I saw. And we go down to the store and spend like drunken sailors and buy stuff every day of the week, which has caused this enormous trade deficit that is, in the long run, unsustainable, where we are buying so much Chinese stuff and those US dollars go to China, and the Chinese are buying a lot of American products, but not nearly as much as we buy of theirs. And so they're more and more owning us. That's not their fault. That's our fault. That's because we decided this was free trade and it was a good thing, and that we were going to become a knowledge society and a service society, and that we didn't want to do basic manufacturing. And now we're suddenly looking at the consequences of it and saying, wow, this has not turned out to be so great. And to blame the Chinese for that, I think is a little disingenuous.
Well, and it does make a bit of a point where, we have our, we aren't real fans of somebody coming in and pointing out our warts to us. We don't have a problem in many instances pointing out other countries' warts to the other. But at the end of the line, and at the end of the day, you mentioned the trade deficit. When China's president comes to town, we take a look at that trade deficit, how much we buy from them, and we play nice.
Well, we should play nice because China is not our enemy. We should treat the Chinese president with the same kind of ceremonial decorum that they award our president when he or the Secretary of State go to China. And you know, this whole discussion to me often is pretty, I think, phony, because we don't want that. We want them to change their currency exchange rate. On the other hand, we are printing money like crazy, and the Federal Reserve has got its presses going 24/7, which is also a state intervention in the monetary policy of our country and affects China. And so, do we want them to come and say, look, you people have to stop printing money because that is also having a negative effect on world trade? You know, it's everybody is trying to some extent gain the system and you know, get an upper hand. But China and the U.S. should not degenerate into shouting matches with each other and pointing fingers. And the Chinese can improve their human rights a little bit, and we've got a long way to go on a lot of things in this country. And we certainly, our business community, could jump a little higher and become a little more entrepreneurial. I think we've gotten lazy, and we have simply said, well, let's just outsource all this and make all this stuff abroad. Maybe we could figure out a way to bring some of that back and do it here and employ Americans.
There's also another component to this, and we mentioned the foreign relations aspect of it. I saw the U.S. Secretary of State on one of the TV shows today, and the bottom line is China's got a vested interest, if nothing else by sheer geography. They've got a vested interest in making sure, outside of political ideologies, that North Korea stays in check. If there's probably anybody in that part of the world that will have a bigger influence on keeping, you know, ultimate best president in check there in North Korea, it's going to be China.
Yeah, and you know, we think they're not doing enough, and that may be true. But lately, I have been seeing the North Koreans shutting up and allowing the South Koreans to carry out military maneuvers within a razor's length of the North Korean sovereign territory, and the North Koreans didn't do anything. And I would say to you that you and I and the New York Times and Fox have no idea how hard an arm the Chinese are twisting on the North Koreans, because the Chinese don't do stuff publicly like we do.
Right.
They do stuff privately. And they may have taken the new little princeling in North Korea in the back room and, you know, slapped them with a couple of chopsticks for all we know. And so let's assume the best, because you're right, they do not need some major conflagration to break out on their border, because it would send most of the people of North Korea fleeing into China and create massive problems for China in every respect. So I'm sure that President Obama and President Hu are going to be having a little confidential conversation away from the White House press corps on this one. And my own guess is that they will generally agree that they both have to cooperate, and we have to work with Korea and with South Korea and with Japan and some of the other players in that neighborhood in having a smart policy to constrain North Korea. I'll bet you, I would bet big money that that conversation either has already happened or will be going on. So,
well, and while you know China may have North Korea's one arm behind them twisting it pretty hard, my guess is that North Korea is using the free arm to take the one thing they really need in that country, and that's food. Pretty readily from China as well. I mean, China's no dummy. They know how to play both sides of the street just like we do.
Well, I think so. You know, and the one thing that is, you know, the big kind of transparent, not yet visible elephant in the room is that China is going to be not just this big economic power, but is going to be a real substantial military power very soon. And they are when the Chinese decide to do something like have the Olympics and build these fantastic Olympic villages, they do say how big and when do you want it done, and they do it. It's not like the United States. They don't do environmental impact statements there. Did you know that?
I am not at all shocked by that.
That's right. So when they want to build a stealth airplane, they steal the secrets of the plan from the United States by hacking into American Defense Department servers and stealing most of the engineering plans. And then they say, I want one of these built, I want a prototype, and I want it to fly on the day, for the first time on the day when the U.S. Secretary of Defense comes to visit. And have somebody leak a picture of it, please. And then that happens, which is what happened, as you know. When Secretary Gates was in China, a picture mysteriously appeared of a plane that looked almost identical to the American stealth bomber, but that's a little more modern because they just are building it, and it flew that day, I guess. So we do have to respect China and cooperate with them because they are going to be not just the second most powerful economy in the world, but very quickly, I think they're going to be the second most powerful military factor in the world. And it would be nice if we could get along with them. And if a nice 21-gun salute and a nice dinner and some nice conversation and a little bit of backing off on pushing them in public, which the Chinese really, really find offensive because they lose face on human rights, we can probably get along with them all right. Yes, they have a lot of prison labor, and they have a lot of people in detention centers, and if people speak up too much and make too much trouble, they basically charge them with something and throw them in jail, and that's unfortunate. But if that's what we're going to stake our relationship with China on, we're going to then throw away the opportunities of all the other things that we can do in cooperation with China, and maybe even thereby have a little bit of influence on them and say, guys, please don't do this because it's bad for public relations, and the world doesn't appreciate what you're doing. The United States has the largest prison population in the world, except for a couple of crummy little countries that I can't remember what they are. 1 in every 100 Americans is either in jail or on parole. And, a lot of countries in the world think that's not such a great record in terms of our own, you want to call it human rights or whatever. So, got to be careful.
Professor, as always, we appreciate it. Let's try and get together next week because I will be interested in your post-game analysis on the State of the Union address.
Okay.
Which comes up on the 25th. I'll be interested next week if you and I can get together so I can get your take on that. If we can make that work, I'd love to have it.
And who's giving that?
No, Obama.
Obama's giving that. Okay, all right.
Come on. Professor, we appreciate it.
Take care.
Iowa State University political science professor.